Hello and welcome to the fourth round of the Australian Chess Championship being played at the Glenunga International School in Adelaide. It's the first time the tournament's been in Adelaide for 20 years, but the player who won it 20 years ago, Gary Lane, is having a hard time, though he did win his first game today. We have an outright leader, though, and that is Rishi Sardana from Canberra. He has 4 out of 4. He continued on his merry way by beating Julia Rianova in another very fine positional game. Here, instead of passively defending his e5 pawn, he dumped his rook on d6, and really there was nothing that black could do about it. The threat was rook d7, white's almost ready to go king f2, king e3 and so on. Rianova decides to take that rook, but the two bishops are absolutely dominant, and they became extra dominant after king c6 because now the pawn chain is invulnerable. And a5 unfortunately allowed a winning a pawn to run down the board. And Julia Rianova resigned. The only player who is now half a point behind Sardana is the surprising Canberran. The two Canberrans are in fact in the lead. Frederick Litchfield, who beat Yi Lu in a complicated night ending. The position looked like it was going to be a draw, but bit by bit Litchfield ground down his opponent whose counterplay didn't work out. So he goes to 3.5 out of 4, and there are 2 surprise packets also on 3. The Vietnamese player Le Tri Kien and also Sam Asaka from Sydney, who beat Zhang Jilin. Well, I guess it was Zhang Jilin who made the final mistake, but she was in trouble out of the opening, fought back, was winning or close to winning, and then somehow found herself in a very bad endgame and lost. The other players near the top, Ben Leong, very impressive 15-year-old from Queensland. He made a draw with second seed Trevor Tao. We did have some controversy earlier in the day, which was only decided in the early hours of this morning, because Chris Wallace, the Victorian champion, had to return home to Melbourne. The thought was to introduce Mark Chapman, international master, as a substitute. Only problem was Chapman would step in as second seed with no points out of 3. The player who was going to have to play him, Jack Rogers, objected on the grounds that he'd already played 2 of the top 3 seeds, and on a half out of 3 you wouldn't expect to be getting a new second seed as well. That objection was upheld, not so much because you couldn't put a substitute in, but because Mark Chapman had been entered for the tournament earlier, had withdrawn on New Year's Eve, and it was deemed that a player who withdrew couldn't come back into the tournament later. I don't know if there's going to be appeal to that, but for the moment Chapman is out. As a reward, Jack Rogers got Leah Rice, the 13-year-old Australian women's champion, who is the bottom seed in the tournament, and she beat him quite convincingly. So he's still on a half out of 4. There was another good result for the kids, and this is the youngest player in the tournament, Rayanch Anapuretti. He was playing Victorian veteran Domagoj Dragicevic. The kid had sacrificed 2 pawns for the initiative. Very brave in a way, given most of his previous pawn sacrifices in this tournament have come unstuck in the ending. But here he found a very strong knight d4 move. If pawn takes, both queen takes on d4 and queen g5 check, most likely winning. So in the end, white played queen a3. Rayanch got one of his pawns back, ready to get a second back, but he didn't take on e3 with the queen. He played bishop h6, rook e1, and he took anyway, because after queen takes, rook d1, the Solomon trick, wins the queen, and it won the game for him very quickly. So Rayanch Anapuretti is up to the 50% score, which is not bad for a 9-year-old. We'll see how he goes in the next round, but for the moment it's going to be a Litchfield versus Sardana match-up on board 1, and I hope you can all come and watch at the Glenunga International School.